3, 2, 1, and we're on. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. I'm Chris Cato, host of the BackMarkers F1 show. I'm flying solo this week. Tyler McDonald and Shaker Barty are away on assignment, so I'm running my own race this week. And I'm going to be bringing you the very first Grand Prix preview of the 2018 Formula One season, as we are 1 week away from the first race in Melbourne, Australia. So everybody is super, super excited that the season is finally upon us and that we can finally stop talking and speculating about all the preseason stuff and we can actually go racing and see how everything is going to play out. So on today's episode, we're going to keep it relatively short. We're going to bring you some of the facts of the Australian Grand Prix. We're going to show you the track layout, some of the best overtaking zones, the DRS zones, and we're also going to be talking a little bit about some of the breaking news earlier this week that came out of Ferrari and some hirings, some questionable hirings that they made in terms of personnel. And, of course, at the end of the show, we're going to show you our weekly historic F1 moment of the week. So let's begin today's episode with actually talking about the breaking news that sort of came out of the Ferrari camp. So we're going to put this article up here so that everybody at home can see it as well. So this is sort of similar to a story that broke last season as well. And this is actually McLaren. So McLaren are very unhappy with a move that Ferrari made with Laurent Mekies. So if you guys are not sure who Laurent Mekies is, that's okay. I didn't know who he was either until this article came out. Laurent Mekies is the FIA's deputy race director and head of safety. So the big news was that he was heading to Maranello in September. So he was going to join the Scuderia and be part of the Ferrari team. Mekies is the second high-profile FIA official to join a team over the past year. So you guys, this is what I was talking about. Last year it was with Martin Budkowski. He moved to Renault, and he was also with the FIA. So there was this big issue and controversy of, FIA personnel and employees moving to F1 teams. So basically the biggest issue is that when you work for the FIA, you obviously have access to a lot of information, a lot of the safety regulations, racing regulations, et cetera, et cetera. You have a lot of information that you bring with you. So the issue that teams brought up last year with Renault and now this year with Ferrari is that it's going to provide a competitive edge for Ferrari bringing on a person like Mekies. Because like I mentioned before, he was the FIA's deputy race director and head of safety. So he's got a lot of valuable information that I think Ferrari and any other team could use. So this was the big controversy last year too of, they wanted to sort of let these employees from the FIA, if they did decide to leave, that they would be put on garden leave, which I think is a term mostly used in the UK. I haven't heard that used here in Canada, but they had agreed upon that no FIA employee or official would join an F1 team for a period of 12 months. And as we scroll down in this article, we can see that Laurent Mekies will be will be leaving the FIA in June and joining in September. So obviously, he's definitely not within that grace period. And McLaren were very unhappy that they, were losing another key employee to a racing team, the FIA. This was coming from Eric Boulier, and Zach Brown came out and said that he was agreed with the comments. So they had agreed in a strategy group meeting a while back that no key technical FIA employees would be employed by a race team within 12 months. And then obviously they went against this. So this is where the news comes in that they had agreed in air quotes, a gentleman's agreement that no FIA personnel would join a team within 12 months. And then obviously Ferrari said they agreed at the time and said, okay, that's cool. And then, they just went ahead and hired the guy anyway. So this is where the big question comes is Formula One sort of a sport where you have something like a gentleman's agreement, or, is it just so competitive that everybody's looking for an edge? Everybody's trying to get ahead, a couple of tenths of seconds here, a couple thousands of pounds or dollars here or there just to make your team better. So, it was interesting. I want to pull this tweet up from Martin Brundle, who said this in reaction. So I'll read this tweet to everybody who's just listening. Martin Brundle says, "There are no gentlemen in F1. Never have been. That's what makes it so raw and engaging, and why I dislike the current this is the part that really gets me. This is why I dislike the current snowflake attitude of some towards F1. It's about delivery and excellence. Win or lose, dog eat dog. Deliver or move over. Fastest, fearless, gifted and great. 240 characters on Twitter has come in pretty handy for debates and statements like this. And I just love that comment from Brundle, the snowflake attitude. I think that's been going around quite a lot these days. So, the fact that an old school driver, not just in sport, but everywhere else. So it's funny to see sort of a former driver come out and say that comment. I quite enjoyed that. And you know what? There's a big part of me that agrees with a lot that he says. And for those that don't know, Martin Brundle was a former driver. He drove an excellent, actually, a GP2 season back with Ayrton Senna. They had a really good rivalry that went on there. But he's a former driver and obviously commentator for Sky Sports now. Really, really knowledgeable guy. And he would know better than anybody, the competitive world of Formula One and what it's like to compete at a highest level. I mean, there's one thing about being a professional basketball player or hockey player, but there's another level in terms of being a professional Formula One driver. There's so much on the line, especially for a team like Ferrari, who came off a really disappointing 2017 season. I mean, they had the championship sort of within their hands throughout the first 6 months of the year, and then completely just lost it at the end with reliability, with obviously the collision in Singapore. So they're really looking to bounce back this year, and there's a lot of pressure on the boys at Maranello to perform. A lot of pressure on Kimi and Sebastian as well to get that Ferrari back where it belongs, and that's, world champion, constructors champion. So I think that what Martin Brundle's trying to say is that there's really no room for this, gentleman's agreement and being soft and being nice. If you want to win, you have to really, really kind of not necessarily cut corners sometimes, but you're going to have to do some things that people aren't going to like. And this is exactly what Ferrari has done. So, let us know in the comments. Send us some tweets of what you guys think about this. Did Ferrari do the right thing? I mean, because one of the biggest things that I was interested in is whether this agreement, this gentleman's agreement, was written down, legally anywhere. So was this a contract that they signed, or was just an agreement amongst, these teams in a boardroom? Because if that's the case, then Ferrari didn't really do anything legally incorrect. But if they had signed something, if something's in some sort of a contract, then obviously that's a different story. But I think Martin Brundle, he kind of summed it up fast, and that's the reality of the sport. If you're not willing to get sort of down and dirty, almost, if you want to use that word that way, then like he said, deliver or move over, and that's sort of the world that it is. So that was one of the biggest news is coming out of the week. It was sort of a quiet week after testing in Barcelona, so we're interesting to see how that plays out, because this is now the second FIA employee to go to a Formula One team, obviously with Budkowski going to Renault last year and now Mekis to Ferrari. But obviously I think Ferrari being such a big team and also a championship contender, this is even more of a story than it was with Renault. So very interesting developments coming out of Ferrari, and they're really looking to capitalize this season. They've got a lot to prove and a lot to make up for 2017. So we'll keep you updated on where this story goes. So Melbourne, Australia, the location for the first race of the season. We're going to pull up here if we can find it, we're going to pull up the track layout here of the Melbourne Park. So this is sort of a street circuit hybrid. So these are, regular roads, but it's not like a outright street circuit like Monaco is. But just obviously a beautiful location for the first race of the season. Melbourne is obviously great weather all the time, so no issues there. And Australia has been sort of the location for the opening race of the season for quite some time now. They had it in Bahrain a few years ago, but it looks like they settled on Australia, which is a good idea. The first race was held in 1996 in Melbourne. Adelaide had hosted in previous years before, but made the more permanent move to Melbourne in 1996. The race will run over 58 laps, 5.3 kilometers, the circuit length, going over a race distance of 307.5 kilometers. And the lap record you can see there held by Ferrari's Michael Schumacher, a 124.125, which was set back in 2004. And obviously, those lap records are going to be a big sort of a question going on in this season, because we've seen some times during testing that would suggest that lap records, qualifying records, whatever you want to call it, are going to all fall and are all going to change this year, just because, Formula One looks like it's getting faster and faster as the years go by. We had a couple of dull years between 2014 to 2016 where, cars weren't as fast as fans would expected. but that looks, to be completely out the window now. I think more downforce this season, more G-force is going to be shown by these cars. So I think we're going to see some of these lap records fall. And then when we actually take a look at the layout of the track here, so this is a very, very good track for some of these drivers. A lot of favorites for the drivers. Fast and flowing. You got 16 corners, 2 DRS zones you can see highlighted in the green. The first DRS zone coming on the start-finish straight, and the second DRS zone actually coming right after on the run down of Turn 3. The first DRS detection zone is at just before Turn 15, as you can see there, before they come out to the start-finish there on 16. And then the second DRS zone on the exit of Turn 2 and on the run down to Turn 3. This is where we're going to see a lot of chances for overtaking. This is where we've seen some big accidents happen in the past, some big overtaking moves happening in the past. So Turn 1 going to be really key for the drivers to be nice and neat and tidy going through the first turn there, as it is a quick quick right to left. And then you have the DRS zone there, which is perfect for overtaking. And then earlier in the week, Pirelli just announced the tire compounds for actually the first 3 races of the season. We're only going to talk about the tire compounds just quickly for Australia, and then we'll cover Bahrain and China, obviously, when the time comes. So Pirelli has decided to supply the teams with the soft, the super soft, and the ultra soft tires for the first race of the season. And they changed, obviously, we talked about this in earlier episodes, the whole, compound. So they added the hyper soft, they added the super hard, they changed some of the colors. So, I'm even trying to still get used to which tires which, but Pirelli has supplied these ones. But just a quick note, or one last thing on the tires. In testing, it's obviously so hard to gauge which teams are going to, be the fastest, because we've seen in years before, for example, last season, Ferrari was the fastest in testing. Mercedes was the eventual champion. So we've seen sort of that testing doesn't really add up to a season result. But what was really interesting to me was that Mercedes looked ominously fast and good on a harder tire compound. You saw, on the first couple days, Lewis set a fastest lap on the medium tires, and then on the soft tires as well. Valtteri put in some good laps, and they were really the only team that put in more than 1,000 laps as well. So they look pretty damn good on some of the harder compound tires. And Vettel set the fastest lap of testing overall, but that was on the Hypersoft. Kimi right behind him in second, also on the Hypersoft. Van Dorn also set a top 5 lap time, Hypersoft again. So, if Mercedes is going to be really, really good on these harder tires, and it means that they can go longer in a race, and if they don't have to go to, the ultra soft or even the super soft, I mean, it's pretty scary if they can put in that kind of pace on the harder compound tire. So that's going to be one thing to look out for this season. And actually, speaking of Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, I want to take you guys back to 2017, and we're going to let Lewis guide us around a lap of the Albert Park circuit. But the first thing I wanted to just touch on quickly was the G-force comparison between 2016 and 2017. So we had another big regulation change, not as big as the hybrid era when it came in 2014, but there were a lot of changes going into 2017 that resulted in faster cars, more downforce, and better racing at certain points in the season, but not all the time. One of the things, is these cars were difficult to pass. But if you look at the G-force comparison, and this is just for here at Albert Park, some of the big ones, obviously, that stand out, we'll look at turn 1 right away. In 2016, 4.7 G. So this is the G-forces at the G-force peak going into the corner. So 4.7 in 2016, that went up to 6.3 in 2017, so a difference of plus 1.6. Same in turn 3, remained the same for both years, and then just a 0.8, 0.2 difference going from turn 5, turn 6, and 9. And then again, turn 11, you see a plus 1.2 difference, 2017, 6.5 Gs pulling through turn 11. And just to sort of give you guys an idea, a fighter jet will pull around 8 or 9 Gs, sometimes even 10 Gs when they're making some extreme moves. And, for a Formula 1 car to pull 6.5 Gs, and like I said, cars look like they're even faster this year, so we might be even seeing more G-forces. We might see this increase going into 2018, and then just finishing off turn 14 again, plus 1.3 difference, 5.6 for 2017 versus 4.3 G in 2016. So drivers are really going to have to be super fit this year. They've talked about this a lot. They've reduced the weight of the car, in fact, as well. So drivers have had to sort of, maybe shed a couple pounds here and there, change the diet, change the workout regimen. But it looks like the cars are going to be almost as physical as they have ever been. So drivers have to be really, really prepared, both mentally and physically, to deal with the rigorous physicality of the 2018 cars. So as mentioned before, we're going to let Lewis take us around a lap of the Albert Park circuit, which is just a beautiful track. I mean, Melbourne, Australia is just such a great place for sports. So this is the lap that put Lewis on pole last year. It was just a scorcher of a lap for Lewis and Mercedes. So you see here the DRS zone. You get all the way up into 8th gear. Turn 1, which is could be very tricky. You hug the apex here. So short apex, you want to hug the corner and get into exit 2. Lewis stayed in 4th gear here. Going on to run down to turn 3, which is the second DRS zone here. Heavy braking into turn 3. We've seen a lot of huge accidents in the past. Lewis stays in 4th here, coming in for turn 5. Turn 5, 250 kilometers an hour. That will most likely be flat out this year, I think, for these drivers. Going into 6, another heavy braking zone. You see the way he just hugs the apex there, clips both sides of the curbs. He's already into 7th, 8th gear now for Hamilton, coming into another big braking zone in turn 9. And you see just the way he opens the steering nice and patiently. And you got to be really careful here. If you get on the throttle just a bit too early, you could meet that wall that's right there. And then this is one of my favorite parts of the track here, just that quick left to right change here. Beware the understeering car. You see that gravel trap right there. You could easily end up on the grass. And then Lewis all the way down to 4th gear here for turn 12. Short run into 13, another heavy braking zone. This is where the DRS detection zone comes in, and it's the run into the second to last corner. 90 kilometers an hour. Good chance for overtaking as well. And then very patient here on the throttle as well. So easy to lose the rear with all that torque coming from these turbo power units. And that's a lap there of the Albert Park circuit, courtesy of Lewis Hamilton. Just a brilliant drive last year, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that from Mr. Lewis Hamilton himself. And for 2018, there's just a couple of milestones to watch out for heading into this season. And the aforementioned Lewis Hamilton, he's going to be looking to break Kimi Räikkönen's consecutive point streak record. And, like Lewis Hamilton or hate Lewis Hamilton, I was watching a couple laps of him in testing, and I was just like, this guy is good. I'm not the biggest Lewis Hamilton fan, but you have to just really appreciate his driving ability. You saw there with that onboard camera, which is my favorite camera, which isn't going to look too good this year with that halo. But, his driving ability is just insane. So dating back to the 2016 Malaysian Grand Prix, that was the last time Lewis failed to finish a race. Obviously, you guys remember that big engine blow-up that he had. So he is 2 races shy of Kimi Räikkönen's all-time record. Kimi had 27 consecutive points finishes, and that span between 2012 and 2013 when he was with Lotus. And obviously that reliable Mercedes engine has really helped him. I mean, McLaren only dreams of having that type of reliability to finish that many races in the points. And speaking of McLaren, actually, you got 3 drivers that are on course for 100 podiums. So as you can see in the picture, Fernando Alonso, Kimi Räikkönen, and Sebastian Vettel. Vettel will most likely even get this in Australia because he is 1 podium away from 100. And it's a little bit farther away for Kimi. Kimi needs about 9. So, depending on how Kimi's season goes, if he's in the hunt for a championship, we could see him maybe get 9 podiums. But it's going to be really difficult if we're going to see a 3-team fight for the championship. And then Alonso, on the other hand, he's only 3 shy, so he's been stuck on 97 podiums for quite a few years now, and that McLaren Honda just did not allow him to get even close to a podium finish. So that's where McLaren Renault are aiming for this year. They want to compete for podiums. There are enough of engine troubles. There are enough of, we're almost tired of talking about it. So, that's the aim for Fernando, for Stoffel, and for McLaren as a whole. They want to compete for podiums, not just points. They want to compete for podiums, finish top 4, maybe even top 3 in the constructors if they can. So Fernando is 3 podiums away from 100. And then one of the biggest milestones, which I think is really cool for this season, it's the first time that we're going to have 2 4-time world champions on the grid together. So Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel with 4 apiece. So they're going to be going for their 5th world champion, which is going to be just amazing if either guy can get to it. Of course, Juan Manuel Fangio has 5 world titles, and then Michael has 7. So they're going to be trying to join an exclusive club as just the 3rd driver to reach 5 championships. It's really just an elite company, and those 2 guys are most likely going to be 1 and 2 battling for the championship. And more Fernando Alonso. He will become just the 4th driver to hit 300 race starts. I think a really nice milestone here for Fernando. He came into the sport as a 19-year-old, and he's been around for a while. He's been through the V10 era, the V8 era, now the V6s, and we forget just how good he is because he's been struggling with with McLaren Honda. But he's 36 now, and we'll see what he does this year, because obviously he has a big commitment with the WEC. If McLaren Renault are really struggling, he might just say goodbye to Formula One. He said that he probably couldn't live with himself if he would have just left after this year, because he wanted to give it another go. He didn't want to have that regret, a couple years down the road. So I think he made the right decision. But I think after this year, if he's not happy with where McLaren is and if they're not competing, I don't think we're going to probably see him in Formula One past this season. And he's going to be going for Rubens Barrichello's record of 322 starts if he stays on for 2019, which would be really quite an achievement. So we'll see if he can get to that record. And a team milestone on the line here for Mercedes. They could join Ferrari in winning 5 titles in a row. So obviously Ferrari back in the V10 era was super, super dominant with Michael and Rubens. They won 5 in a row in terms of constructors' titles. So Mercedes is going for their 5th in a row. Of course, Red Bull from 2010 to 2013 won 4 in a row. So Mercedes is looking to one-up that and go, for their 5th in a row. And just finally, Max Verstappen or Red Bull. We often forget because Max is only 20 years old, and he's heading into his 4th season in Formula One. He came in when he was 17, driving for Toro Rosso. So that's pretty crazy because he's still so young. And he's going for just a couple more youngest ever records. So he already has the record for the youngest winner, youngest point scorer, youngest podium finisher in Formula One history, and also the fastest lap holder. But what he's going to be gunning for now is the youngest ever Formula One pole sitter. That's the one thing that he got a little bit close to a couple times last season, but wasn't able to do it. So he's going to be aiming for that this season, and that record is held by Sebastian Vettel. Monza in 2008 when he took his maiden pole and victory for Toro Rosso, the only one actually in the history of the team. And also, interestingly enough, Lance Stroll could even break that record just because Lance Stroll is 19, so he can do anything younger that Max Verstappen has done. But I think that in terms of the way Williams has shown their pace this season, I don't think Lance Stroll is going to be getting anywhere close to a pole position. He did set the record for the youngest driver to start on the front row last year. Obviously, if you're Jacques Villeneuve, you'll probably argue, well, that was because, so many engine penalties for Ricciardo and other cars as well. But, anyway, it still counts, so we can give him that. But I don't think Williams will be competing for pole positions anytime soon. And just to wrap up today, guys, our Australian Grand Prix preview, make sure to check Formula1.com in terms of when the race, qualifying, and practice times will begin depending on your geographical location. So just for example, us here in Ottawa, Canada, in the Eastern Time Zone, it's going to be a late night or early morning, any way you want to look at it for us. So qualifying on Saturday will begin at 2 a.m., and then the race start will be Sunday at 1:10 a.m. So really important to note that the race will start 10 minutes past the hour for the 2018 season. That is a little something that they changed. And also that free practice 1 will be on Thursdays now. And they've moved practice 2 and 3 just to Friday. And Saturday will just be left to qualifying. So we won't see that normal practice 3 for the 1 hour in the morning on Saturday. It'll just solely be the qualifying. And it's pretty exciting. I can't believe that we're finally here. We're already at the end of March. First race of the season. It's going to be a big season ahead of us in terms of Formula One. We're going to be with you guys from lights out to the checkered flag of each weekend, providing you with these previews and obviously race reviews. And I'm really looking forward to it. I won't make any race predictions in terms of who's going to win the race and who will be on the podium. I think obviously Ferrari and Mercedes are going to be fighting for the race win and for the race podium. I really hope Red Bull can get up there. I'm just not, I haven't got my soul, 100% trust in Red Bull just yet, because they have started, the last few seasons out pretty slowly. But I really hope that they can sort of get off to a fast start here. And then we're going to see, is Ferrari's pace for real in testing, or, are we going to see Mercedes just blow everyone out of the water? They might have just, turned the engine down just a little bit in testing, or they were just doing long run testing. And they've been ominous in qualifying in this hybrid era. So I think that will be the interesting to see on the Saturday, if anybody can sort of compete with Lewis, especially in terms of that one lap shootout. Before we go today, we're going to take a look at our historic F1 moment of the week. And it's just fitting that we take something from the past of another Australian Grand Prix. And this comes at the 2002 Australian Grand Prix. And I love the caption here from F1 Images. And make sure you guys give them a follow on Twitter. It's at F1_images for all the latest historic photos and videos and content like that. A flying start for Ralf Schumacher at the 2002 Australian Grand Prix, and that was quite a race. A lot of accidents happening there, and that's a tricky turn one, like we mentioned earlier. So important for those drivers to get there nice and clean so that you can continue on with the race. So that's our historic photo for the week. Well, that's the end of episode 3 and our Australian Grand Prix preview. We always thank you guys so much for joining us. Let us know in the comments. Send us some tweets of what you guys want us to cover in future episodes. If you got any questions, if you got any debate topics that you want us to talk about, we'd love to hear from you. We can include you in the show, so chime in on Twitter. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. You want to stay up to date with all the content and all of our latest episodes. I'll be posting all the clips from this episode later on in the week. So you have a little bit of a build-up to the first race on Sunday. And next week, we're going to provide you guys with a little bit of a special episode. Tyler, myself, and Shaker will be on location at the 2018 Ottawa-Gatineau Auto Show here in Ottawa, Canada. So if you're from the region, or if you're listening from outside of the country, we're going to show you guys a little bit of what Ottawa automobiles have to offer. So that will be an interesting episode for you guys. 1 week away. We're 1 week away from the first race of the season. Enjoy the race, guys, but until next time, it's bye for now.